Board games, board games, it's what we're talking about. Board games, I'm not gonna shout. I am starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing, and today you might do a double take because I'm joined by someone else, and her name is Laurie Blake. Laurie Blake has made a game on Kickstarter. It's going, I hope, much further, and you will be pleased to know it's doing rather well, and we'll talk about all sorts of things and life and games and motivations, and hopefully you will tell us all about Laurie Blake. Laurie Blake, that's who we're talking about. Laurie Blake, I'm not gonna shout. Hello and good morning, Laurie.
Hey, good morning. That's the most singing I've had this early in the morning since I was about 10 years old, I think. So.
Really? Wow.
So, yeah, good job.
Well, and good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is to anyone watching. And this is, of course, the Bezzy Beats and Briefer Blether. There's the beats, and we are going to have a blether. I do normally try to keep these to about half an hour or so, but of course, with a guest, if it gets to an hour, then great, as long as we're both happy to carry on. And yeah, we're going to be just talking about life, delving a wee bit into childhood, talking about maybe how you got into games, talking a wee bit about some favorite memories, and then maybe talking about what motivates you right now. We'll talk about what motivated you to make Earth Rising, and we'll talk about plans for future. I hear that, based on your profile, bio, it sounds like you've got lots of ideas that you have to restrict yourself to just one. Sounds like a bit of a struggle.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is one of those things of those people who have like those bookshelves that are like whole almost libraries and whole rooms dedicated to them. Yeah, that's kind of my brain, but for just like game concepts. So yeah.
And presumably it wasn't always this way. Presumably there's been a while where, it sounds like you're a very imaginative, thoughtful, creative person, but was it always games?
So, I've been playing video games since I was, I guess, 4, 5 years old.
Wow.
My dad was also into like board games and such, and so I would have been around them and possibly playing them with him that early anyway. Games have been a permanent in my life forever. Excuse me. So I think it's going to be one of those ways in which, having been pretty much immersed in it forever, it becomes a natural development of just, I guess, how ideas can be framed,
Absolutely, because some people want to express themselves via illustration, some people via writing, some people via music, some people via dance, but it sounds like your focus has always been through the interactive rules design, essentially.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, even before, so my origin as I suppose, creative was actually writing. And I have a published book. I have it here, in fact. I got published by DK Books, doing a little educational and sort of narrative adventure through the human body. Yeah, where people were in a little drone that went through the human system. That was really good fun to write, and yeah, actually became a real thing. So that was my first foray into actual professional creative stuff. And yeah, from there, I had always been doing role-play systems, and I suppose, writing sort of fiction books as well. And then at some point, board games just kind of took over. And yeah, it's been one of those things of I've never been able to not create. It's a drive in itself. So when board games took over, it became a lot easier to focus on it, because unlike writing, which is a very solitary experience, and even role play, which is you need to formulate the system and all that sort of thing, but then you just have sessions within which you do it. And often those can be quite long form. Board games is a singular experience. You do it from beginning to end, and it finishes, and that's the whole thing. So it's much easier to test. So yeah.
There is definitely a delightful sense of ownership that you can change things so easily, and especially if normal board games. I mean, there's obviously exceptions to everything. You can get some board games that would be insanely difficult to test. Maybe you have massive player counts and they take literally multiple days to play.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
For a regular thing, there's definitely a joy in playing it, in iterating, and that sort of refinement, that iteration is what brings me personally joy.
Absolutely.
But let's take a step back just for a moment, if we can, and talk about some recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. Now, I'm going to go very quickly and show a few pictures. So yesterday, I was at the pub. These are two people, don't know them super well, but got to know them through the medium of playing a game together. We played Roots. I was the Riverfolk Company for the first time in real life. The Riverfolk Company, for those who don't know, Roots is a highly asymmetric game. And Riverfolk Company is all about selling stuff, setting your prices, and other people give you troops, which you can then potentially give back to them. Now, no one was buying from me. Maybe I set my prices too high, but I wanted to make sure that even if I made, one sale, then it would still be better for me than having 0 sales, if you know what I mean. Because maybe I should have gone for the gamble, set them slightly lower, so that 2 sales would be better than 0 sales. Do you know what I mean? It's because you do get a consolation prize if you get literally 0 sales, and that's the kind of trick. Anyway, It was a lovely game. Giselle in the back finally won by taking over the place with all the cats. Then I played this other game. Well, I had a vegetarian roast dinner. It was fairly nice, but the potatoes weren't that crispy, and it was a wee bit underwhelming, I've got to say. Like, the vegetarian Wellington, it was nice, but it felt a bit mushy, if you know what I mean. Like, I prefer veg when it's got a bit more texture, when it's a bit more coarsely chopped. That's my personal preference. We then played this game. I believe it's called Philosophia. I might be getting that wrong. It's a relatively new game. There's lots of ways to put things on the board. There's like 7 different ways to get one of these labyrinth tokens. Once you've got one of these labyrinth tokens, you can go to the end. And at the end, I managed to win, but it was incredibly underwhelming. And that was a bit sad. We had this protracted debate that we had the 2 decks. Everyone had bought out the whole decks between us because we knew that this big debate was coming. I played a card to reset the timer, which was, okay, when you are about to win, then in 4 rounds, you will be able to actually trigger the end of the game. So it's not like you do this thing, then it finishes. It's you do this thing, then you take the action that progresses the timer, then you have to take that action like 4 times, and only one person can take it each round because of the way that the worker placement thing works. And so it would be so everyone would get a chance to catch up. And so I think they're trying to come for a high stakes, aha, we all battle. And even though you did it first, but it just didn't quite work for me. And I wouldn't be playing that again for pleasure, is the truth. But one game that I would play again for pleasure, and I did play a second time the same night, was Roots again. So this time we had the cats and instead of the vagabonds, we had the birds, we had the woodland company, and Saha on the right, waving at the camera, was the riverfolk, and it worked really, really nicely. We had to abandon the game. I was very much in the lead as the birds, I think I'm quite good at the birds. Also, I was playing with 3 brand new players, to be fair, but it was just a delight. And Roots continues to be one of my favorite games. And hello, Adam from Punchboard,
Hey,
and
Adam.
it is just one of my favorites. So, Laurie, have you played either of these games?
So I haven't played either of them, but I've heard so much about Root. That said, if it's okay, like I'm really curious about the Philosophia one because I'm quite a fan of philosophy. It sounds like a really fascinating subject to do a board game about. What was it in the end that made, like, was it the fact that when it comes down to it, it's all about that final exchange that determines the winner, and so therefore you couldn't prep enough, or what?
No, I prepped plenty. I won. I just felt very. I mean, I did. It wasn't that I. Look, the debates. Okay, I don't have a picture of the debate cards, but just to, the debate cards are on the board, and you can actually, if you look very closely on the bottom right, you'll see my stacks of all the debate cards. I think I ended up that side one. So some of them are just nonsense, and they say, by stating my facts over and over, you will eventually agree with me. And it's quite nice thematically because those can be beaten by any valid argument. So any valid arguments, then there's a kind of rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock system for the valid arguments, where this is beaten by these things, this beats these things, and it ties to itself. Every turn, you play something, the person you're debating with plays something, either one person wins, they take both cards, or it's a draw, each person takes their card back into their winnings pile, and then you repeat. And if you've got 4 people involved in the final debate, which is the way it is, then one person battles the next, then that person battles the next, and that person, and it's like these 4 rounds. And so you're going through, and it takes maybe 5-7 minutes of essentially this rock, paper, scissors. You've got to play through, I think we had about 100 cards, so maybe 50 turns of doing this. So it wasn't actually that much, but it felt fairly mindless, if you know what I mean. And so, ironically, for a game about philosophy, and you could read out all the arguments, but the arguments were repeated. It wasn't like they would be entertaining. And I said at the start, have we decided not to do that? And they said, yeah, otherwise it'll add on another hour to what should just be a climax. But still, it was a dragged out thing that felt like inconsequential. And it was like, I had managed to buy more cards than anyone else. I had managed to acquire more cards. I was probably going to win. There was a possibility that I might not. But yeah, like it just felt a really, really weird way. And it kind of reminded me of, I don't know, that the quest for the magic carrots, if you've heard of that one.
I haven't, but yeah.
Where in this one, the quest for the magic carrots, you basically, each victory point is essentially another raffle token, if you can imagine that. And then at the end, they're like, okay, lucky number, whoever has number 42 is the winner. And so you might only have 1 victory point, which was victory point number 30.
Sorry, right. Okay, I'm back again. Sorry, my Bluetooth headphones cut out. Sorry.
If you had victory point number 42, then you would be the winner, and you might have actually not gotten as. Anyway, it felt like there's not quite the randomness here, but there's a little. Maybe they wanted to add in a little bit more variance. Maybe they felt really happy with these debates, but I felt honestly like the bulk of the game was a marginally above average Euro game with some interesting ideas. And the debate system was a uninspired, unexciting thing, and there was no reason for the way the game is to always end in a debate, which means that rather than a climax, it's an underwhelming denouement.
I was going to say that from the look of the game, it almost looks like there's 2 separate games that have been pushed together. where you've got that debate system at the end, but ultimately the majority of it is this, it has the map and all the rest of it, which I wonder if they would have been better off focusing on one or the other rather than necessarily, trying to do both.
It's interesting because I think that as a gamer, I enjoy playing new games. So it was a pleasant experience and it was lovely people. But talking about recent highlights, and I don't want this to be just about a game that I didn't particularly enjoy. But firstly, have you had any recent highlights yourself that you would like to talk about? Because there is, of course, your Kickstarter that you might want to.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. My only waking thought at the moment for the last 3 weeks has been this. So yes, this has been my recent highlight. Pretty much is Rising, and the Kickstarter and how that's been going, which has been really great. We've been very, very pleased with the reception it's been having, and it's looking like we're going to be hitting our final stretch goal soon, which is really great. And yeah, it's basically, for those who don't know, it is a game about transforming our world to a sustainable future. It's a 1 to 6 player cooperative board game, and effectively it is all about finding the balance between transitioning our world away from the things that pollute and damage our climate, and towards something that supports both the climate and the people who live in your society, but in a way that doesn't put more people into poverty through that transition. So yes, it's as I say, been going really well. £27,000. Very, very pleased with that. Nearly 28 now. Nearly 600 people have jumped in on our game and decided that they would like a copy, which is fantastic. A huge thank you to all of those. And we have a mere 5 days to go, which is both terrifying and a mild relief. So
yeah, that is phenomenal for your second Kickstarter. The first one, no, sorry, your third Kickstarter launched.
Second, but we had to relaunch this one.
Yes, I meant in counting this one, the first Earth Rising.
Yeah, so I mean, the first one went on for about a week, and then we received so much feedback from so many backers and so many people who are really passionate and interested in the game as a whole, that we sort of felt, okay, it's not working as it is. And on top of that, we got a message from our manufacturer who basically said, obviously your game is all about sustainability, and my company is also all about sustainability, and we'd like to offer you a 1,000 game run instead of the 1,500 one, which would significantly drop our goal that we would need to hit. But we couldn't adjust our goal once the campaign had started.
Yeah.
So after everyone saying about the ways in which we could improve things, on top of the fact we were able to drop our goal, we were like, okay, you know what, let's take a step back, let's rejig it, and then let's relaunch it and do it right. And it seems to have worked. So
if you don't mind me asking, how many copies are already spoken for at this point, if you know what I mean?
Oh, I mean, it's going to be close to that number, but there will be some additional. Let's have a look. So
I see 147 backers, at least, who have. Oh no, and 371. What's that?
I'm just going to grab my little calculator. Let's have a look.
I assume some people backed for multiple. Have you lined up anything with shops or?
So right. So according to this quick little calculation, it looks like 601 copies of the game itself have been sold.
That is fantastic. And with a 1,000 print run, it might well be that you actually need to increase that a tiny bit.
Yeah, Entirely, it's entirely possible that we may need to, which would be fantastic. Like that would be excellent. And so the way that we're doing it with the shops and such, we have had a number of shops reach out to us. We've got a number of where does it say it in the thing? Yeah, we've got about 10 retail backers from around Europe and America, and each of those haven't put their money into the Kickstarter. They're instead going to be adding it in the pledge manager, so we can tailor their pledge to be exactly what they want it to be. So that means that the amount that's reflected in the Kickstarter isn't in fact the topmost amount that we'll actually be receiving for the stuff, which is brilliant.
But having said that, I mean, for people who are new to Kickstarter, you need to remember that about 10% of that goes to credit card fees and Kickstarter fees.
Exactly.
And then, you know, most of that will be production, and a lot of that will be postage, and
that's it. And on top of that, we're giving 50% of our profits to our partner charities. So the amount that we'll be making from the game is probably relatively minimal. But nonetheless, what's great is that we're going to be producing a game that we're going to be able to put out and will massively, I suppose, both educate and entertain people in regards to how we can face the climate crisis and make positive progress towards changing our world. So as far as I'm concerned, even if we don't necessarily make a lot from this, so long as we're able to afford the game and afford to get it shipped and all the rest of it, as far as I'm concerned, that's a win. So,
I mean, I have to admit, when I saw that, I was thinking, well, 50% of nothing is still nothing. And the truth is that I believe that my most recent Kickstarter, personally, will actually be the first Kickstarter where I've managed to get over £100 profit, which is because quite often what I find with a Kickstarter is that most of the money does go into the, you know, printing of extra copies. And it's not like, okay, well, all those extra copies you make money on, because then actually selling them is such an ordeal, frankly. Yeah, it's enjoyable. I love going to conventions. For anyone who's seen me, you know that I'm buzzing, that it's an emotional high. But it is still an expense. I have to pay the money to be there. And frankly, selling the other games means that I lose less money than if I was selling nothing. And so, yeah, it's...
So
but
to be
then
clear,
the truth comes that I'm not the great business person.
there's a difference between the profits that the game make and the profits the company makes, and it's entirely possible that, like with our various company expenses and having to do things like going to conventions and paying for that, that comes out of the company. That doesn't come out of the game.
But I was
profits.
talking about directly after the Kickstarter. I wasn't including convention expenses in that. Just once I have fulfilled all these things, have I made any money? And the truth is, with In a Bind, for example, it took me about a year before I was in the black. And the reason that I was in the black, which was a lovely moment, and the realization that I could be in the black, and now I could do a reprint, and I'll continue to print it again. And it is a great game. Like, I feel egotistical every time I mention it, but yeah, Yogi, I do have a French version here.
Amazing.
Je te donne des pauses tordues. This is probably the most printed copy. Whereas, yeah, I think there's a new non-American English version coming up, but so that's slightly exciting. So kind of British English, which might be being printed soon.
Brilliant.
But, yeah, anyway, let's have a massive rewind and let's go with some questionably quick questions. That's the next section. I'm going to ask Laurie Blake some questionably quick questions, and anyone else who wants to join in, feel free to ask some questionably quick questions. So, Laurie, first thing that comes to your head, cubes or cards?
Oh, I think I'm going to go with cards. Yeah. Do you want me to explain it, or is this the kind of thing where you just answer and move on?
If you feel like you need to explain it, go for it.
Okay. Basically, cubes are great for keeping track of stuff, but ultimately what they mean is dependent on what they're on. whereas cards are
But
a
cubes can
self-contained.
include dice.
Oh, that's different. That I didn't consider that. Okay. Oh, I'm still gonna just about go with cards then. Only just, but only because I think dice as a player I love, but as a designer I still prefer cards. So it's
more information and more versatility.
absolutely, yeah. So yeah, as a designer I'm very much in camp cards, but dice are so much fun to roll, you know.
Yeah. Oh, hello Xenofuel, who says it's pumpkin spice season. What's your opinion on pumpkin spice?
I would probably have an opinion on pumpkin spice if I'd ever had anything of that kind. I'll be honest with you.
It feels like a much bigger thing in the USA and some other countries compared to the UK.
I think it is. And there's all the adverts about that stuff, but I'll be honest with you, the places I go, I just don't see it. Like, I'm not a coffee shop man, so I can't say I've had pumpkin spice lattes or anything.
Like if you go to those American coffee shops, you get all the fancy stuff at Costa and Starbucks.
Exactly. But over here, I don't think it's quite so big, so haven't experienced it yet.
Xenofuels does say cards are so much easier to prototype. That is absolutely true. And my question for you is, what is your next game? Can you give us a sneak preview?
Okay, so we are currently looking at 2 potential games that we could be going with. We are thinking about going effectively where we go like a big game like Earth Rising, followed by a small game, followed by a big game. And that might sort of even out in the sort of cost and requirements for what it takes to make one, and so make it a little bit more viable as a company. But what we're hoping to do is with our next small game, if it works, is basically we're hoping to do a run where we're able to produce a version in each different area. So, for example, an EU version, a US version, a UK version.
To reduce shipping.
That's it, exactly. And that way, dependent on people backing, will be dependent on where it gets produced or not. So this way, we don't need to worry so much about shipping costs. This way, we don't have to worry so much about production being I suppose being more than it needs to be. Most of I'm almost half the cost for producing in China is getting it shipped. So as a result, if we can produce it locally across multiple continents, then we might be able to cut down costs enough that we can get it produced a bit easier and add that accessibility that little bit better. So that's what we're hoping for. With that regard, we are looking at the possibility of making a game.
But having to be reactive like that is going to add a lot of challenges, and it will definitely be interesting to hear how that goes.
Yes, it's a big undertaking, but we've got enough friends in the board game industry now from around the world that we think we'll be able to get some really good feedback about who are the people best working with, and who we might be able to get a good balance between, production quality and at the same time being able to get it spread around that continent nice and easy. We've already done fulfillment, we've already done production in various different companies. As a result, we think it's something we can manage.
Okay. Adam asks, what is the last game you played where the whole table was laughing?
Well, I think that will have been Robo Rally, which I'm a massive fan of Robo Rally. I get it out whenever I possibly can, but it's the kind of game where you formulate exactly what you think is going to happen, and you get this perfect idea of what you want to happen down, and then everyone goes at once, and chaos ensues. And so as a result, people get pushed into pits, people get pushed into traps, people miscalculate exactly how many spaces they need to go forward or whether or not they need to turn left or right, and all of a sudden end up going in some wildly random direction, and it's brilliant for that. So yes, I think probably Robo Rally is is the last game where everyone was just killing themselves laughing.
Fantastic game from an immensely talented designer.
Yes,
And
Richard Garfield, what a man.
Xenofuel mentions, I think it was D&D, where the table itself was laughing glass for me. Damn, mimics. And the final question I'm going to close the questions soon after this. What is the ideal number of chuggas before you say choo-choo?
Okay, let's have a think.
Maybe you should just say it.
So
say it
I
out
think
loud.
I think it's about 8. I think it's about 8, you know? Chugga 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 choo choo. That's gotta be it.
Chugga 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 choo choo. Yeah, it does feel like it has to be a pair. It's like, you know, I was having this discussion with my housemates who's French, like oh la la. You can't say oh la la la, because it doesn't work. You can do any number of las as long as it's an even number. So you can say oh la 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 la. And the longer that it is, it's like the more the misery you're going through, almost the anguish. Adam says Anomi always does it for me, and Xenofuel says I'm a 4 or 8 person myself. Interesting. So maybe it's a thing where it's got to be a multiple of 8.
Maybe, yeah, or multiple of 4.
Yeah, that is what I meant. Thank you for correcting me.
That's okay. Yeah, I think it's one of those. It's a rhythmic thing with trains because, you know, obviously trains don't go chugga anymore. Yeah, I think that's one of the beauties of those. I mean, as an autistic child, I was adored steam trains. We would literally go to places where steam trains were just so I could bask in the glory of steam trains. So I have quite a bit to say on this subject, but nonetheless, I think it is that rhythm that does it. It's an almost kind of animalistic kind of the breathing of it. You know, when you are running yourself, you've got that. The train has that itself, and I think that's what makes it so attractive. You know, steam trains so attractive as opposed to just normal electric.
Let me ask you, what is your first memory that you're willing to share?
Oh my goodness. Well, first memory. So
honestly, like if it's a year within your first memory, I'm not going to call the cops on you.
Obviously, but like, you know, I'm 31 now, you know, so my childhood memories are just blurring in my old age. You know, I'm just getting so. No, I'm joking, but it's in terms of first memories. I think honestly, it's probably I have first memories for particular moments, like particular things that stand out more than I have one particular first.
So like
thing.
Your first romantic memory, your first memory in school, your first memory of games, your first memory
exactly.
of
right. They're much more linked to specific things than they are necessarily time. But what's interesting about that is that as part of my autism, I really struggle with time as a whole, really struggle with my perception of it in general. I generally will have no idea how much time has passed when I'm enjoying myself or in any way having a conversation with someone, or the fact that we've apparently been talking for half an hour boggles my brain because it does not feel like that in the slightest. But this will be the case with anything. And so I feel like the perception of memory being a first or whatever is something that my brain can't really fathom. And so it's linked to first things.
Okay. Well, give us one of your first things. If I could ask, maybe a first dancing memory?
First dancing memory. Okay, all right. Yeah, sure. So I have a very clear memory of I had a bear, a giant bear, which I still have. It's in the back room, but it was as big as I was. And I adored this bear. It was called Arthur. It is called Arthur. And basically, I would dance around with it. I would hold it by the paws, dance around with it, bounce it. It was as big as me, so it was perfectly able to, you know, actually bounce.
Were you at school at the time? Were you more than 5, or are we talking even younger?
I think I must have been about 3-ish.
Wow.
Got to be around that point. Yeah.
That
So
sounds magical.
it's pretty crazy. So yeah, no, all sorts of stuff like that. So I think interestingly, I have a really vivid memory of around that time of I had a tiny little plastic helicopter, and my parents used to love having candles and such around. And it was at this point that I discovered that if you hold this plastic helicopter above the candle, it turns black. How fascinating. This was very quickly matched by a sudden realization that, ow, that hurts really quite a lot. And that's about where the memory ends. So, so that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I remember doing some sort of scientific experimentation which was maybe potentially destructive as a but there's something brilliant about curiosity. But I'll let you pick, unless you don't have any ideas. Just what is one thing that gives your life some meaning and joy? What is for you a brilliant thing? Brilliant thing. What's the little thing which is brilliant?
Okay, so I mean, I'm personally a really big proponent of being grateful for the things that we have in our lives. And so as a result, when you say, what's a brilliant thing that really keeps you going? My brain's like, here's a list.
Shoots it to me. Let's just go rapid.
I mean, my most brilliant thing in my life is probably Ree. Ree is my partner, and I adore her, and she's just the best. So, absolutely, hats off to Ree. She's just the best thing. Second of all is Tobin, our dog, who is both ridiculous and a complete brat, all in one go. He's just the best thing again. Another thing, I am incredibly thankful for the fact that I am able to be. There they are. There's my BTs, my boy Tobin and my girl Ree. They're the best. So yeah, I'm incredibly thankful for the fact that I am at a place where I'm able to work with my creativity in a way that is productive. Because that is something that everyone who is creative has to go through. You have to find a way in which you can work with your own process. And I'm incredibly thankful that at my age I was joking earlier about being old. I'm not at all. At my age, I've already gotten past that. I know how my creativity functions. I know how to work with it. And I'm able to produce things that I'm genuinely really happy and proud of. And that's wonderful to have. I'm also really thankful for the fact that I have a home at the moment that is actually stable. I have been homeless twice. I'm incredibly thankful for the fact that I do not have to go through that again. And it's one of those things of the lower you get, the more difficult those necessities are to obtain, the more thankful you are to have them when you do. So yes, incredibly thankful for that.
And when you're in a place like that, when you're homeless, or it's interesting how many barriers there are to getting yourself out of that situation. It is a truism that if you are impoverished, there are so many money-saving measures that you can't afford to do because you're just thinking about that day or that week. You're not able to buy a longer-lasting thing that would last you a good few years. That's it. Reap benefits in the long term.
Yeah, it's called the mercy of the cheapest option, and it's basically you don't get a choice in what you buy. You just have to buy whatever you can afford, and most often those are things that are literally the worst possible thing you can buy because they're the only thing that's cheap enough to do so. And yeah, there's a horrible what's the word for it? Like a paradox in particularly in UK poverty, where you can't get help without a bank account. You can't get a bank account without address. You can't get an address without basically a bank account or a job. But you can't get a job without either of those previous things. So it's this: once you lose one of those bits, you are that much closer to losing all of it. That is Yeah, it's scary. But I'm incredibly thankful that I'm out of it. I'm incredibly thankful that I am in a place with a wonderful partner, with a wonderful dog. All of that is just awesome. So,
I mean, it
yes,
sounds like really, when it comes to it, it's like hopefully everyone watching, if you're watching this on the internet, chances are that you have enough stability in your life to be watching a show that's about people chatting about luxuries, essentially, where, yes, I enjoy, for me, for sure, especially during COVID, chatting to other people became almost like a necessity for my own mental health. But at this point, it's like, yeah, I'll interview sometimes. I'm lucky enough that, I'm able to go out to the pub. And I am privileged enough that I did buy, honestly, arguably an overpriced Sunday lunch at the pub. And yeah, parts of that is wanting to support the place that lets us be there for the entire day and not have them think, oh, we don't want to have them over again. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I am. But hopefully, everyone watching is in a relatively stable position, and they can find some sorts of appreciation for that stability in life.
definitely, and it's one of those things, I suppose, of it's important to appreciate it, and a lot of people are very lucky to be in a position where they don't know what it's like to not have those things. But I think there's enough out there that you can see what it could be like. And just by taking a moment to consider what that is like, and to consider the fact there are loads of people, and unfortunately a growing number of people, who are in that position, hopefully should create more understanding and empathy towards those situations, and in turn help make a push for getting them out of it.
Okay, well, I'm noticing that, yeah, I'm trying to keep this as a briefer Blether. Let me ask you, what is the moment that you decided that you wanted to express yourself creatively via board games?
So the first board game I ever made was actually a bit of a weird one. It was like a kind of bolt from the blue almost. I woke up with a fully formed, as far as I could see it, concept for a game. As I say, I've always been playing board games. I've always been doing games of various types anyway. But this was I just woke up and bam, it was there. And so I got up, and I probably had things to do that day. I didn't do them. I instead sat down at my laptop and I wrote out all the various bits for what I believed.
Is in your adult life?
Yes, very much so. Yeah. So this was probably about 6 years ago, I'm gonna say. Probably. Yeah. So I literally just sat down on the laptop and bashed it out as best as I could and got it down as quickly as I could. I made a print and play within 2 days.
Nice.
Yeah. So and then it got tested, the bejesus out of it. It had loads and loads of testing, and that was great. But I got other ideas. I prototyped them. I got other ideas from those. I prototyped them. Things, the game in question was called Argumentative. I'd love to come back to it one day. It's a kind of look at where each of the participants is in an argument, and the objective is to play the last card, as in be the one to have the last word. And you effectively move through various different stances, like such as aggressive or passive aggressive or victim or obstinate, or I think objective is the last one. And you're moving through these different stances, and you're trying to have this kind of argument. And they've got these kind of comical lines on them that you're meant to read out loud.
I'm imagining a very random kind of rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock dynamic there.
Almost, but the difference is that every time you enter a position in an argument, so let's say the aggressive one, you are not able to play two other types of argument next. So if you play an aggressive one, let's say, for example, you can't play victim or something objective, let's say, because you've just been angry. So as a result, other people playing stuff that blocks additional stances slowly whittles away your ability to be able to play certain stances until eventually you're left speechless. So it is a bit rock, paper, scissors, but at the same time, there's a blocking element to it. So you're trying to stop people from being able to enter stances you think they have. So there's that side of it too.
That sounds really interesting. And Ree just wants to make it known that you were beaten within minutes.
So me and my father Jasper have a wonderful familiar issue, which is that we cannot bloody win any bloody games. It doesn't matter what I'm playing. It doesn't matter how well I think I'm doing. In the end, I will probably lose. It's a very rare occasion when I actually manage to win a game, whether or not I've made it.
So what you're saying is that I shouldn't play any cooperative games with you because you'll just make us all lose because of your curse.
No. Thankfully, I think I make cooperative games because it's the only way I get to win.
Okay.
Because everyone else carries me. I think that's more the point. So yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you're just kind of doing idea after idea, and then finally you find one that it's like, okay, this is one that I want to stick with, whether that's Pugs and Mugs or whether that's something about the environmental impact around us, something that stands out for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, so Pugs and Mugs wasn't my design. I did develop it with Stuart, who did design it. But generally, I designed in a very different way to Stuart, and it seems majority of people in board game design spaces, in that I start first and foremost with a concept and idea, and then build the what's it called? The things that make the game happen.
Mechanics.
There you go. Thank you. Mechanics. You build the mechanics around the concept and the idea of the what it's trying to get across, rather than starting with the mechanics and then building a concept around it. So
when you talk about a concept, it sounds like you're really talking about a genuine theme rather than just a setting.
I think so. I think that's probably
in board game circles talk about, Waggle Dance has a theme of bees, whereas honestly, as much as I love Mike Nudd as a designer, and I think Waggle Dance is a fantastic game, and the reason I picked it is specifically because I believe it's a fantastic game. I don't believe that if you had to say that game has a theme, I think that the theme would be about I'm not like, I guess you could really reach into it, but does every game have a theme? For me, Waggle Dance, it's about sometimes you don't want to grow. Sometimes, like the stopping of growing, the race, and the blocking of other people. But I don't know how to there's definitely a strong experience, but I'm not sure there's a theme in the way that you would say a piece of literature or a film can have a theme that then resonates with you and leaves a lesson in your mind afterwards.
So yeah, I think the way I design is very thematically focused as opposed to mechanically focused, and it's one of those difficult things where in board game design spaces they very much push the idea that you should start with mechanics because that's what makes a strong game. I found that I could your mileage may vary, but nonetheless, in my experience, that seems to be what happens. But I would be more than happy to find more people who design from a thematic formation, and I think it's something that gives me a what's the word for it? It gives me a freedom to find mechanics that suit the idea more than it does finding a theme that suits mechanics, because mechanics they're a skeleton of a game. That's not to say a skeleton isn't important. It's incredibly important. Without a good skeleton, you will collapse. But nonetheless, what makes a game memorable and fantastic to me is its theme. So,
I mean,
yes.
It's interesting. So Adams mentions Dan Furrow, who Space Biff, who did a brilliant talk to game designers talking about the difference between theme and setting. And I know that there's been a lot of, I mean, it might be that the people you're talking about are in your small parts of the country, but certainly when I heard from Jeff Engelstein or Isaac Schlev or people who are doing podcasts, because I listen to lots of podcasts about it, and there seems to be a general agreement that, start anywhere. You've got name first design, where you start with a name, like Abandon All Artichokes, or Couple, my own game, like Emma Larkins with Abandon All Artichokes. There was a list of names with, what's the thing where you've got the same letter at the start of different things? Alliteration?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, alliteration and then alliterative names, and people are, Abandon All Artichokes. I love that. I would buy it. In which case, yeah. Well, if people are already saying that based on the name, I should probably make this. And
absolutely.
Yeah, you can have this inspiration from anywhere, and experience first is different from theme first or setting first, and you can be inspired by the components. And I think that wherever you start, it kind of comes together. And I think that I might be getting a tiny bit defensive because the kind of games that I work on are quite often the games that don't have a setting, because frankly, my most financially successful game, Yogi, it's like, what's it? There is no theme, there is no real setting. It's like, the mechanics are the game, and like the same comes true of most word games. And even in a game about wee whimsical creatures and trying to identify them after someone makes noises, with that, sure, you could say, there's a theme or a setting of creatures, but that's just, it's all about the experience / central mechanism / central thing you do is making noises. And I'm not sure
to be clear, to be clear, like we at the beginning of this we were talking about Pugs in Mugs. Hi, Joanne. We were talking about Pugs in Mugs, and I was explaining about the difference between how I design games and how Stuart designed games. And so Pugs in Mugs is just like you're describing. It is a game which the game comes from how it works and how it plays, and it's a great game. Like I genuinely love it. It's brilliant. And there's no, like, however you design your games is absolutely valid. And whatever games you want to make is absolutely valid.
So, but even there, like, the theme is strong enough that the title describes, it doesn't tell me anything really about how the game plays. It tells me about the subject matter and the setting of the game. Whereas even my one, a game about wee whimsical creatures, sure, it mentions the wee whimsical creatures, but then it goes on to say, and trying to identify them after someone makes noises. And that's the key bit. It's the someone makes noises and then people try to identify them. That's the game.
I'm really looking forward to getting that, by the way. I'm awesome. Very much, it's going to be great fun.
I have the sticker company isn't being very communicative, which is very disheartening, but the manufacturer is sending me the games hopefully in time for next weekend. So I'm going to be sending out an update to say, hey, you could come to Walthamstow and get your games, but they might not have stickers in them yet, which will be a shame, and then I'll have to still send out the stickers separately. But anyway, back to you, because, and let me actually do a quick shout out to Joanne, who's a lovely person who plays music. And talking about music, what is your favorite song?
My favorite song? Oh my goodness. I have very
also welcome to jump in. But...
absolutely. So I mean, I have a very eclectic music taste. It will vary across multiple genres. So it really, much like the whole memory conversation, I had multiple favorite songs in various different genres. But I think I grew up very much listening to ska and punk, and so I think classically, my favorite song has always been oh God, no! Now it's just gone from my brain's just not functioning today. I'm so sorry.
That is totally okay.
Yeah, my favorite song was from a band called Bomb the Music Industry, and
Bombed, B-O-M-B.
B-O-M-B, Bomb the Music Industry, and they have very long and complicated names for every single one of their songs, hence why I can't remember the exact one. But nonetheless, yes, it's.
So what you're telling me is that after this, once I'm getting, I should go and check them out and look them up and listen to one of their albums.
If you want to, yes. They're a very different taste to most folks' desires, but nonetheless, yeah, if you would like to give them a go, you're more than welcome to. So okay. Yes.
That sounds really good. So my question to you is, what do you consider your responsibility as a designer?
My responsibility as a designer would probably be to design something that people can be engaged in. If a game doesn't engage someone, to me, it's, in my mind only, it's a failure. So when I'm designing a game and if people don't get into it enough that they lose attention or they are finding themselves not really in it by the end of it, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think I've done a good enough job. It needs further refining, it needs more work, etc. So, sweetheart, bye. See you later.
Bye, Ree.
Beth says bye. So, yeah, if someone... And obviously, people are so incredibly varied. And so as a result, there's no way you can guaranteed engage every single person in the world. But for me, I think so long as the majority of the folks who I play it with, who I test it with and such, are engaged in what it is, in how it plays, in what the outcome is and everything else, that to me is what I need to make sure of when I'm designing a game.
There has to be a sort of honesty in marketing. I mean, as you say, no one is ever going to make something that appeals to everyone. Yeah. But by explaining upfront, this is what the game is about, that way, hopefully, people will be warned. Yeah. I mean, I seem to have developed this naming system for my Bezzy budget bags. So the extra game for the Kickstarter, which is a game about drawing creatures, complimenting the drawings, then complimenting the compliments. Hopefully that tells you about the nature of the game. And if you're interested in playing something that's super competitive or is quite strategic, hopefully you understand that that game is not for you. It's basically just about drawing some things and then having a good time, complimenting everyone, and feeling good about what you've done in life, or at least for that moment. I mean, sometimes games are, but it's like, there is the question of sometimes if you want to subvert the normality, like Root, going back to Root, where it's got these super cute characters, but it's an incredibly complex and strategic and thoughtful game, which you might not expect if you see these lovely figurines and whatnot. And so then, but having said that, there is like a big board and a big box, and it's not like you would buy this 50 quid thing without doing some serious research into what it's all about, hopefully.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of the once you're an experienced designer, it's one of those things that you sort of recognize is that if you're going to be testing your game, you need to be testing it at least at first with the audience it's designed for. So, there's no point in taking, say, for example, one of your games to a hardcore strategy game group and going, so what do you think? Because the feedback they're going to be giving is going to take you away from the audience that you actively want to work towards. And that's something I think that I think a lot of rookie designers really struggle with, because it's like, well, I just want something that everyone will enjoy. And so when they get a lot of varied feedback without understanding where that feedback comes from a enjoyment perspective, it can make a lot of very confusing ideas of, well, how should I be changing my game that I don't really understand? So I think understanding who you need to focus on, who you need to approach, and who you need to have trying your game in order to be able to make it the best game of that type that you can make, that's very much an important part of it. So you're right. I think it's important to understand where your game sits, and as a result, who you're trying to go for.
Yeah, this idea of being the best version that we can be. And like the final thing I would like to ask is, yeah, what would you like your legacy to be? Like, partially as a designer, but partially also as a human. And that ties into the question of how much do you feel you are defined by your game design, and how much do you feel you are defined by everything else?
Okay,
I know these are big reaching questions, but
they are big reaching questions. So I think it's one of those things of, what do you want your legacy to be as a human? Oh my God, like people's lives change so much over so much of a period of time that you can't ever really tell. But what I would want more than anything, if I could make a wish and make it come true, is that I would be able to live and subsist solely off my creative endeavors. If I can hit that, I'm happy, 100%. I don't need anything more than that, realistically speaking. However, from a designer perspective, what would I want more than anything? If I could ask for a legacy that would mean that I would feel, I don't know, accomplished as a designer, I would want to win Spiel des Jahres. If I can win Spiel des Jahres, and then I'm satisfied. I'm happy. Not that I'm necessarily a competitive person, but it's one of those things that I'm not normally bothered by competitions, but it is nonetheless one of those things that
there's a lot of validation if your game wins the biggest prize in the world for board games.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I think after that point, you don't need to worry too much about trying to convince yourself whether or not you're a good designer. If you've hit that, then you're like,
know. I know that there are people who still worry, am I a good designer? And I've not had the pleasure of speaking to, Richard Garfield or Antoine Bowsey yet, but yeah, I think that no matter how well you've done, there's always the worry, okay, am I going to be able to do something good ever again? Okay, sure. I made one thing that sure some people think is good, and I guess it must be good, but I think there's always a sense of self-doubt.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's what's the word for it? It's imposter syndrome, right? There's always going to be that little niggling feeling in the back of your head, unless you're, I don't know, so incredibly overconfident that you're like, no, everything I make is glorious. But I don't think either of us are that sort of person. And yeah, you know what? There'll always be doubt. But I think we have to turn back and look at the things we've done to persuade ourselves that we can do more, right? All of our future successes are built on the backs of both our past failures and our past successes. Everything we know and everything we do is built on those things. And so as a result, I suppose, I wouldn't, if it got to the end of my life and I hadn't won Spiel des Jahres, I wouldn't go, no, if only, my life is a failure because, but at the same time, if I did, I'd be like, amazing, that's it. Okay, cool. What more could I hope for? At this point, I can just enjoy myself creatively, make games I love, and do that. Because at that point, I suppose I would not feel like I needed to prove myself to anyone necessarily beyond in a way that would make me satisfied. So yeah, that's the base of it.
Yeah, that's kind of the pinnacle that you would like to get to. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. Now, it has been lovely chatting. It would be lovely to chat to you some more, And I do have the pleasure of saying that we are going to chat together a wee bit more tomorrow with Ree, and we will chat about carbon neutrality, maybe even carbon positivity with your latest project where you're trying to, and what exactly that means. But first, I would like to invite everyone watching to talk about, over to you, what are you up to? You can share, but only if you want to. So whether it's something that you think is fun, something that you wish you'd done, or something that you want to do, or something you're looking forward to doing, something that you're excited for, fun and frivolous, or something that is super serious, let me know what sort of plan you've got. Feel free to share. Would you like to take us away, Laurie? What are you up to for the rest of the day?
So for the rest of the day, later on tonight, we're going to be doing a stream of Earthrising with the SDR crew. So we'll be getting together and just playing our game online, and anyone who wants to come and see and join in and shout about it is welcome to come along and cheer us on. So we're probably going to be mostly prepping for that because we're not experienced streamers, and most of the time we don't really know what we're doing. So we're going to be messing about with things like Streamlab and whatnot and trying to make sure it all works in advance. So that's probably our plan for the day, but I'm really excited to sit down in front of everyone and play our game. So yeah.
And see if you, because it's a cooperative game, presumably if people are watching, they will be able to give in comments and tips, and you might be like, oh, wow, that is actually a really good idea. Let's do that.
Absolutely, definitely. We'd love it if people were to join in because, one of the great things about no hidden information games is that everyone can see what everyone's doing all the time. So if someone's like, oh, well, actually, if you do this strategy and you try this for this action, then you could accomplish this. We're like, oh, yeah, damn, that's a great idea. Let's do that. So, yeah, definitely.
Sounds like lots of fun. And Joanne is doing some cooking, going to make a treat for a friend. That sounds lovely. Yeah. And I really appreciate how much it seems like, just to specifically Joanne, but obviously this doesn't mean that it doesn't apply to other people as well, but like the nature of really looking out for other people and saying, hey, I hope you're doing well, and kind of spending energy. It's like a really lovely thing, because I think that relationships and other humans and our connections are so important. So I really appreciate you being out there and being like, you know what, that friend needs is this treat, so I'm going to cook this treat. And so thank you for being an excellent person, Joanne.
Yeah.
And to everyone else who is thinking about others, thank you also. Continue being excellent.
Absolutely. It really can make that much difference. Even if you don't necessarily know that you need it, sometimes just someone turning up and doing something for you and being like, hey, I did this. And I did it thinking of you. It can make that just such a huge difference to someone's day. So yeah, definitely.
And after this, I'm going to write some emails. I'm going to try and write an update for the Kickstarter. I'm going to write some emails that I should have done a while back for the LDEC art contest and then the design contest, because lots of head. Not going to sit here and make excuses. Should have doesn't mean I'm a bad person for not doing it. It just means in an ideal world, that's what would have happened. But we aren't perfect. But it has been once more a lovely chat. And thank you, Laurie. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was about to call you Luke. But thank you, Laurie, for jumping in and having a chat. I'm excited to chat with you tomorrow. We chatted about the nature of memories, the nature of the rhythm of the Steam engine, that apparently you want 8 chugga 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 choo choos. That cards are slightly better than cubes, even if you include ice in that. And the nature of how you make a game, and the nature of being in this family that was just all about gaming, and the nature of finding other people, giving thanks to the security that we have, like the stable housing situation, which can be, so many of us can be ignoring the blessings that we have. And I think it's really important to be thankful, as you say. And yeah, we talked about the nature of making games, aspirations, and how we get around making things that might not be for everyone. If you want to check me out, then obviously I'm Stuff by Bez everywhere, stuffbybez.bigcartel.com, where you can buy stuff, twitter.com/stuffbybez, instagram.com/stuffbybez, twitch.tv/stuffbybez. I'm streaming every day at 10 a.m. UK time. youtube.com/stuffbybez has all the old episodes, stuffbybez.com/discord if you want to join Discord. And if you check out stuffbybez.com/streams, that will give you a vague idea of what's coming up in the next few weeks. But honestly, there's no main topics for the moment. The only one to watch out for is tomorrow, 10 a.m. We will be chatting about environmental impact of board games and how we can reduce that as publishers. I want to mention the Kickstarter that's over here, of course. But is there anything else that you would like people to be aware of, to give a shout out to?
Let's see. Our close friend Chris from Unfringed is currently doing a game on Kickstarter as well called Zuli. So if if you've already backed Earthrising, or if you not sure that it's for you because it's a little bit long, maybe go check out Zuli by Unfringed, and it's a great little game. So go check his stuff out as well.
Oops, didn't mean to go back to that one. But definitely check out Earthrising and check out the SDR Game Studio on Twitter, and also on their main page, which should have just appeared. And I want to say thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, of course, for Laurie for joining me for this conversation. Thank you, Adam and Joanne and Bones and Rhea and Xenofuel. Thank you, everyone, for just jumping in and contributing to the conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
For now, we are going to have a very quick raid. I think that let us check out the excellent streamer, musician, Amadeus. Let's go there. It was their birthday earlier on. Didn't have the energy to watch, but we can go there. Feel free to copy paste some or all of the raid message. There is only one thing left to say, but before, is there anything you want to finish up with, Laurie?
Thank you everyone for watching. Thanks everyone for listening. And it would be really great if anybody wanted to come and talk with us. We're on Facebook, we're on Discord. Come jump in and chat. We've got plenty of things to say. So come join in. It would be great to hear from any of you. So thanks for your time.
Well, for now, once again, as always, bye, 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 bye. This is the goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go through. Bye, 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 bye. This is the goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go.
Bye.
Bye-bye.